Part 11 of the Blue Review, Volume 1, Issue Number 3, edited by John Middleton Murry. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Novels by Hugh Walpole. Security and Adventure. 1. Mr. Winston Churchill, in his novel, The Inside of the Cup, has given his many readers precisely what his many readers desire. Mr. Churchill has, for a number of years, now been heavily lumbering along in his slow-moving, solid and practical conveyance, and we have greeted his very solidity as a relief. He has given us, once in every 2 years, a hard chunk of American social history, introducing us to men and women whose boots and overcoats are admirably convincing. With heavy solemn tread, no smile upon his face, his gaze a little anxious, his chin confidently raised, Mr. Churchill has solemnly displayed his histories. I had shared for a number of years in that comfortable armchair reality that had pleased so many of my acquaintances. There was, for one thing, no danger, no startling imagination, no ironic phrase. No beauty suddenly revealed could jump the nerves. Only, always, I knew that sedate and companionable voice would murmur on for my slothful entertainment. Now, suddenly, with the inside of the cup, the desire for that security has vanished. I am bored, indifferent, impatient. Perhaps in this account of American religious disturbances, Mr. Churchill is heavier, more solid than ever before. Perhaps the need for another Robert Ellesmere has passed. Perhaps sentences like, "Hodder's eyes were arrested by a crowd, barring the sidewalk on the block ahead," or vivid description like, "Behind the house in the sunlight were massed spruces of a brilliant arsenic green with purple cones," had an unsympathetic effect. Perhaps the frontispiece that shows us Mr. Hodder's anguish as he is asked by a lady friend, "Can you feel that you are an individual, a personality, a force that might be put to great uses?" told me that Mr. Hodder's history would be unsatisfactory. It is enough that Mr. Churchill has allowed his interest in questions of modern theology to overwhelm both his sense of humour and his knowledge of human nature. His book is dull, lifeless, void. Nevertheless, there is this interesting fact about it, that its solid security is precisely what a very great number of people desire. Mr. Churchill is, in his books, so safe, so sure, so certainly to be relied upon, that there can never be any kind of question as to his success. If he wants to tell us about a sidewalk, or an arsenic green house, he tells us without a tremor, without exaggeration or extravagance. If he wants to tell us about the troubles in a clergyman's soul, or the unhappiness of a lady of pleasure, he tells us quite simply, with words exactly suited to his vision. This placid perfection, this assured definition, is as near to art as the Eiffel Tower is to Chartres Cathedral. But it is always visible, always tangible, always assured of its importance. What would happen to Mr. Churchill did he have a sudden revelation? Were he to behold pigs flying, or the Statue of Liberty floating happily down New York Harbour, it is terrible to consider. Meanwhile, he is magnificently safe. 2. With what an anxious eye would he gaze upon Miss Sheila K. Smith, or Mr. D.H. Lawrence, were he informed of their perilous existences. Such works as Isle of Thorns or Sons and Lovers must seem to him the maddest and most irresponsible adventures. He would, in fact, be quite justified in considering that the Raphael of Miss K. Smith or the Paul Morel of Mr. Lawrence were dim and uncertain figures beside his own Mr. Hodder. Mr. Hodder's clerical hat is as certain as the days of the week. Raphael, Paul, are dimly and most strangely clothed. The dividing line is here. Mr. Churchill has his public, his message, his sure reward. Miss K. Smith and Mr. Lawrence have, in comparison, a small public, no message, and a reward that is their own private affair. Meanwhile, they are engaged upon the most thrilling adventures. Isle of Thorns is the fourth of Miss K. Smith's novels, and is worthy to stand with its predecessors. Perhaps Starbrace is still the most satisfying of these volumes, and I'm not sure that The Tramping Methodist did not, 5 years ago, carry one as far along the road as the Isle of Thorns does now. But to anyone who does not know the earlier novels, Isle of Thorns must come as a fine shining experience, a work that, with some faults and a number of uncertainties, arrives very nearly as a great romance of the first class. It is, I believe, the very uncertainty of Miss K. Smith's touch that is the most hopeful element in her work. Amongst the younger novelists, she stands alone for the inspiration of her vision. That inspiration sometimes fails her, but she is less dependent than any of her contemporaries on her own past experiences. She creates simply by the fine energy of her imagination. At times, as now in the character of Sally, that imagination refuses conviction. Sally is real at moments only, and her relations with Baird and Raphael are clouded by the failure of her own spontaneous movements. In evolving her, Miss K. Smith has been forced to work her imagination instead of allowing that imagination to do as it will. Sally is only half imagined, but Raphael, his tramp, his son, his charming priggishness, is a triumph of character. Miss K. Smith has found him without being told that she ought to find him. The adventure came to her. The fair, the Sussex country, the hedges and skies and fields, lights and darkness, these things colour, without false sentiment or purple effects, her pages. She is, in all things, the true artist. 3. Mr. Lawrence is also an artist, and Sons and Lovers, in the first part of it at any rate, demands our most serious admiration. The pages that have to do with the early Morel history, with Mrs. Morel, Mr. Morel, a magnificent sketch, young Paul, William, and the others, are finer than anything that the younger novelists have given us since James Douglas's House with the Green Shutters. I am reminded of that earlier work by Mr. Lawrence's combination of hard realism and passionate colour. There is much here that bites hard into the page, and seems to stain it deep with its fine pungent reality. Little things Mr. Lawrence can array in fine procession. The meadows seemed one space of ripe evening light, whispering with the distant mill race. She sat on a seat under the alders in the cricket ground, and fronted the evening. Before her, level and solid, spread the big green cricket field, like the bed of a sea of light. Children played in the bluish shadow of the pavilion. Many rooks, high up, came cawing home across the softly woven sky. They stooped in a long curve down into the golden glow, concentrating, cawing, wheeling, like black flakes on a slow vortex, over a tree clump that made a dark boss among the pasture. I have quoted that at length, because this passionate beauty is on every page, and close against it, passionate ugliness, grit, grime, vice, disorder, unhappiness. Behind it all, there is this zest. There is the new thing that Mr. Lawrence is bringing to the English novel, a flaming excitement about everything in the world. Leaves of Grass rise to one's mind as this fine catalogue is proclaimed. It seems to me now that Walt Whitman's poetry is the only proper parallel to Mr. Lawrence's Sons and Lovers. But it is precisely because I feel that parallel that I am not sure whether Mr. Lawrence is yet a novelist. The supreme duty and purpose of the novelist, as distinguished from the poet and the essayist, is the creation of character, and it is here that Mr. Lawrence fails. Very fine is the inception of Mrs. Morrel, but as the book progresses, and Paul is caught into his amorous adventures, Mrs. Morrel slips away. Surely it had been Mr. Lawrence's purpose to discover his book's motive in the struggle between the mother and the lover for Paul. That struggle, eagerly anticipated by the reader, is lost in Mr. Lawrence's discoveries. Here is a scene, here is an experience, here a colour or a scent. Always these things, the thrilling jumble and collision of life, catch Mr. Lawrence's attention. Paul himself is never bound finally together. We are shown him here and there, are told of his impulses, his desires, but the ultimate picture that we should have of him is never given to us. Finally, there are in this book too many physical experiences. It is not that such things are of small importance, but it is rather that the repetition of them overbalances the book's proportions. It is this excess that is Mr. Lawrence's chief danger. Here, however, in Isle of Thorns and Sons and Lovers, are two books, courageous, honest, adventurous. Introduced Mr. Hodder and his theology to Raphael and Paul Morrel, and how good for him these new friends would be. End of Part 11.